looking at friction, and then at the end we'll be sharing past questions on it. Now, first of all, when we talk about friction, we have to talk about motion first of all, okay, which is one of the topics you would cover later on. So, in friction, I hope you can see my screen, everybody.
Yes.
Okay. So now in friction, first of all, when we talk about friction, we have to talk about motion. Okay, please. In this topic, we're going to be able to touch about two or three other topics in your syllabus because it revolves around two or three syllabus, two other topics. Motion and then force, because friction is a force. Now, for us to understand friction, we need to first of all understand motion. Now, what is motion? Motion is the change in position of an object with respect to time, right? So like initially, I can be at this point and then I move on to another point. That means I have moved in layman terms or I have exercised motion. And there are various or several types of motion. Number one, you have linear motion, which is the motion of an object in a straight line. I hope my voice is very, very audible.
Yes, sir.
All right. So we have number one, we have linear motion, which is the motion of an object in a straight line. We have oscillatory motion, which is a vibratory motion. For example, you have your simple pendulum. You have your simple pendulum whereby it is hinged at a particular center point, which is called the equilibrium point, and then the pendulum swings by and by. You understand me? That's an example of a vibratory motion. That means it is the particles are vibrating about a particular point. So we have linear motion, which is the motion of an object on a straight line. For example, you can have a car moving on a straight road. That's an example of linear motion. Not the tires, because the tires are exhibiting rotational motion, but the car itself is moving in a linear direction. That's why you have equations of linear motion, which is another topic we will also cover. Now, having looked at motion, that means motion is very essential for us as beings because we need to move around. Like in biology, you learn reasons why organisms move around. You learn about phototropism, I think, which is an object moving around in search of light. For example, plants, right? You can see different trees, the same trees rather, can grow at different rates, even under the same condition because of their response or motion to different things. So, for example, a tree can bend in order to access light, right? It can develop roots that grow in a particular way in order for it to tap water. So, basically, one thing we can all agree upon is that motion, movement is very, very important for us. And now, that's where friction now comes in. Friction is a force that opposes or resists the motion between two objects. Friction is a force that opposes or resists the relative motion between two objects. Now, what is relative motion? Relative motion simply means that two objects are moving with respect to each other. Because no matter how you are moving, you are engaging in a form of relative motion, which means that you are moving with in comparison or with respect to another body. For example, if I'm lying down or if I'm walking or if I'm rolling with with respect to the surface of my bed, I'm experiencing relative motion, right? If you're in a car, you could be sleeping in a car, but you are moving by virtue of the object you are in. So I'm not moving in the car, but the car is moving. So I'm moving by virtue of what the object I am in. So that means relatively, I am also moving with respect to the ground, despite the fact that I myself am not moving. Do you understand what I'm explaining, class?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, very good. So, like I'm saying, relative motion simply means that two objects are moving with respect to each other. So all of our motions are relative to one particular object or one particular reference point. Usually, the ground is our reference point. So friction now comes upon as a form of force. It's a contact force because it is not a force that can occur without there being contact. You have to be on walking on the floor from come in. So friction occurs when two surfaces are in contact or relation. Now, pass your ball across your room. Maybe you're doing some cleanup and then you have to move a very heavy ball from one side of the room to the opposite side of the room. Have you noticed something that as you are pushing it, you experience a resistance on the floor? As you are pushing it, you discover that at a point.
Let's look at this example of a man. Let's call him Nemeka. So he's trying to push a wardrobe on the floor, and I was asking us the question. I said, have you tried to push a box across a room on the floor? You try to slide it in, or you try to push it and you experienced a form of difficulty in doing so? Has anybody experienced that? We?
Yes, sir.
All right. So that resistance that you felt as you were pushing it along the floor, as you're trying to, slide it along the floor, is actually called friction. Now, what is friction actually doing? It is resisting or opposing your motion. So as you are pushing the object, let's say in this direction, friction is acting in the opposite direction, trying to say no, don't move, because friction opposes relative motion between two or more surfaces that are in contact. But we notice something which will carry us to the types of friction. The harder you try to push, it will become as though the object is becoming heavier until a point whereby, as you are able to push to a particular degree or to a particular force, you discover that this object now easily begins to move. Have you experienced that? That immediately you started trying to push it, just like a very good example is, those are neighbors those days that when we were going to school, they can be like, please come and help me push this car or start this car. Initially, it will be difficult. We are all trying to push the car, trying to get it to start to move. Then after a while, there's a particular force everybody will exert, and you discover that if I'm not talking about when the car starts, that's the car moving on its own. I'm talking about just able to push it so that you can be able to kickstart it. That at first you will be trying to push and push and push, but there's a particular force that everybody will exert on that car, and you discover that you're now easily pushing the car around before the car is able to kickstart. Do you understand that? Have you experienced, especially maybe for the boys? Have you experienced something like that?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes.
All right, all right, good. So that means that initially, what was different? We're pushing this car, or you are pushing that wardrobe on the floor, and it was difficult. Up until a particular time, it now became easier. That's because you have now overcome the friction. At first, when you were pushing, friction was limiting, saying, no, this car is resting, it will not move. And it is in obedience to Newton's first law of motion that states that every object will continue in a state of uniform motion or rest unless acted upon by an external force. For example, your book will always remain in your bag unless you open up your bag and pick up that book to read it. Your phone will always be wherever it is unless you decide to act upon it. A ball will continue to roll in air. If I throw a ball upward, it should continue to go up and up and up unless another force, which is gravity, pulls it down. So that means that the moment where that car was static, what happens? The car is supposed to remain static. But then we decided that we want to start pushing. So that resistance, friction will come up to say, no, this car was resting initially, let it be. So it's trying to oppose your motion. That kind of friction, the first type of friction, which is the highest or the greatest power, that's the strongest type of friction, is called static friction. Now, what does static friction do? It prevents the object from starting to move because that body was at rest. Let's say if it was the example I used, the example of the car that you're pushing, you're trying to help someone kickstart the car. or a box you're trying to slide. Maybe there are some things that are too heavy that you cannot carry them, but you can just manage to push them around the floor or slide them around the floor. So you will notice initial resistance and initial difficulty. That friction that you experience at first is called static friction. I remember what I said. It is the strongest kind of friction.
Welcome to Demo Tutorials Online Academy, where dreams take flight. Demo Tutorials Online